History of Israel. This article is about the history of the State of Israel and its historical background. For the history since its independence, see History of Israel 1948 present. For pre-modern Jewish history, see History of the Jews and Judaism in the Land of Israel. For a broader overview of the region, see History of Palestine. This article may be too long to read and navigate comfortably. Its current readable prose size is 118 kilobytes. Please consider splitting content into sub-articles, condensing it, or adding subheadings. Please discuss this issue on the article's talk page. February 2023. Visual History of Israel by Arthur Schick, 1948. Part of a series on the history of Israel covers an area of the southern Levant, also known as Canaan, Palestine, or the Holy Land, which is the geographical location of the modern states of Israel and Palestine. From a prehistory as part of the critical Levantine corridor, which witnessed waves of early humans out of Africa, to the emergence of Natufian culture c. 10th millennium BC, the region entered the Bronze Age c. 2000 BC with the development of Canaanite civilization, before being vassalized by Egypt in the Late Bronze Age. In the Iron Age, the kingdoms of Israel and Judah were established, entities that were central to the origins of the Jewish and Samaritan peoples as well as the Abrahamic faith tradition. 1 to 3, 4, 5, 6. This has given rise to Judaism, Samaritanism, Christianity, Islam, Druzeism, Bahaism, and a variety of other religious movements. Throughout the course of human history, the Land of Israel has come under the sway or control of various polities and, as a result, it has historically hosted a wide variety of ethnic groups. In the following centuries, the Assyrian, Babylonian, and Persian empires conquered the region. The Ptolemies and the Seleucids vied for control over the region during the Hellenistic period. However, with the establishment of the Hasmonean dynasty, the local Jewish population maintained independence for a century before being incorporated into the Roman Republic. 7. As a result of the Jewish-Roman wars in the 1st and 2nd centuries CE, many Jews were killed, displaced, or sold into slavery. 8, 9, 10, 11. Following the advent of Christianity, which was adopted by the Greco-Roman world, under the influence of the Roman Empire, the region's demographics shifted towards newfound Christians, who replaced Jews as the majority of the population by the 4th century. However, shortly after Islam was consolidated across the Arabian Peninsula under Muhammad, Byzantine Christian rule over the Land of Israel was superseded by the Arab conquest of the Levant in the 7th century. From the 11th century to the 13th century, the Land of Israel became the center for intermittent religious wars between Christian and Muslim armies as part of the Crusades. In the 13th century, the Land of Israel became subject to the Mongol invasions and conquests, though these were locally rooted by the Mamluk Sultanate, under whose rule it remained until the 16th century. The Mamluks were eventually defeated by the Ottoman Empire, and the region became an Ottoman province until the 20th century. The late 19th century saw the widespread consolidation of a Jewish nationalist movement known as Zionism, as part of which Aliyah Jewish return to the Land of Israel from the diaspora increased. During World War I, the Sinai and Palestine campaign of the Allies led to the partitioning of the Ottoman Empire. Britain was granted control of the region by League of Nations mandate in what became known as Mandatory Palestine. The British government publicly committed itself to the creation of a Jewish homeland. Arab nationalism opposed this design, asserting Arab rights over the former Ottoman territories and seeking to prevent Jewish migration. As a result, Arab-Jewish tensions grew in the succeeding decades of British administration. In 1948, the Israeli Declaration of Independence sparked the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, which resulted in the 1948 Palestinian expulsion and flight, and subsequently led to waves of Jewish emigration from other parts of the Middle East. Today, approximately 43% of the global Jewish population resides in Israel. In 1979, the Egypt-Israel peace treaty was signed, based on the Camp David Accords. In 1993, Israel signed the Oslo I Accord with the Palestine Liberation Organization, which was followed by the establishment of the Palestinian National Authority. In 1994, the Israel-Jordan peace treaty was signed. Despite efforts to finalize the peace agreement, the conflict continues to play a major role in Israeli and international political, social, and economic life. Prehistory. Further information, Prehistory of the Levant. E.S. School Cave. The oldest evidence of early humans in the territory of modern Israel, dating to 1.5 million years ago, was found in Ubaydiyah near the Sea of Galilee. 12 flint tool artifacts have been discovered at Iran, the oldest stone tools found anywhere outside Africa. Other groups include 1.4 million years old Acheulean industry, the Bezat Ruhama group, and Gesher Not Yaakov. 13. In the Mount Carmel area at El Taban and E.S. School, 14 Neanderthal and early modern human remains were found, showing the longest stratigraphic record in the region, spanning 600,000 years of human activity. 15. From the Lower Paleolithic to the present day, representing roughly a million years of human evolution. 16 other notable Paleolithic sites include caves Kisum and Manat. The oldest fossils of anatomically modern humans found outside Africa are the School and Kafsa hominids, who lived in northern Israel 120,000 years ago. 17. Around 10th millennium BC, the Natufian culture existed in the area. 18. Canaan. Main articles, Canaan and Jahai. Canaanite sculpture showing a lion and a lioness at play. Beit Shean, 14th century BC. Today in the Israel Museum. Canaanite period gate, Tel Dan. The Canaanites are archaeologically attested in the Middle Bronze Age 2100-1550 BC. 19. There were probably independent or semi-independent city-states. Cities were often surrounded by massive earthworks, resulting in the archaeological tells common in the region today. In the late Middle Bronze Age, the Nile Delta in Egypt was settled by Canaanites who maintained close connections with Canaan. During that period, the Hyksos dynasties of Canaanite or Asiatic origin ruled much of Lower Egypt before being overthrown in the 16th century BC. 20. During the Late Bronze Age 1550–1200 BC, there were Canaanite vassal states, paying tribute to the new Kingdom of Egypt, which governed from Gaza. 21. In 1457 BC, Egyptian forces under the command of Pharaoh Thutmose III defeated a rebellious coalition of Canaanite vassal states led by Kadesh king at the Battle of Megiddo. In the Late Bronze Age, there was a period of civilizational collapse in the Middle East. 22. Canaan fell into chaos and Egyptian control ended. 23-24. There is evidence that urban centers such as Hazor, Beit Shean, Megiddo, Ekron, Istid, and Ascalon were damaged or destroyed. 25. Two groups appear at this time and are associated with the transition to the Iron Age. They used iron weapons, tools which were better than earlier bronze. The Sea Peoples, particularly the Philistines, who migrated from the Aegean world and settled on the southern coast, and the Israelites, whose settlements dotted the highlands. 20. Ancient Israel and Judah. Main articles, History of Ancient Israel and Judah and History of Palestine. Early Israelites, Iron Age I. Main articles, Hebrews, Israelites, and Biblical Judges. See also Origins of Judaism, Biblical Archaeology, and the Bible and History. The earliest recorded evidence of a people by the name of Israel as Isser occurs in the Egyptian Merneptah stele, erected for Pharaoh Merneptah, son of Ramesses II. 1209 BCE, which states Israel is laid waste and his seed is not. 26. The Merneptah stele. According to mainstream archaeology, it represents the first instance of the name Israel in the historical record. Archaeological evidence indicates that during the early Iron Age I, hundreds of small villages were established on the highlands of Canaan, on both sides of the Jordan River, primarily in Samaria, north of Jerusalem. These villages had populations of up to 400, were largely self-sufficient. 27-28, and lived from herding, grain cultivation, and growing vines and olives with some economic interchange. 29. The pottery was plain and undecorated. 20. Writing was known and available for recording, even in small sites. 30. William G. Dever sees this Israel in the Central Highlands as a cultural and probably political entity, more an ethnic group rather than an organized state. 31. Modern scholars believe that the Israelites and their culture branched out of the Canaanite peoples and their cultures through the development of a distinct monolatristic and later monotheistic creogene centered on a national god Yahweh. 32-33-34. According to McNutt, it is probably safe to assume that sometime during Iron Age I a population began to identify itself as Israelite. differentiating itself from the Canaanites through such markers as the prohibition of intermarriage, an emphasis on family history and genealogy, and religion. 35. Philistine cooking tools and the prevalence of pork in their diets, and locally made Mycenaean pottery, which later evolved into bichrome Philistine pottery, support their foreign origin. Their cities were large and elaborate, which together with the findings point out to a complex, hierarchical society. 2036, Israel and Judah Iron Age 2. Main articles: Kingdom of Israel United Monarchy, Kingdom of Israel Samaria, and Kingdom of Judah. In the 10th century BC, the Israelite kingdoms of Judah and Israel emerged. The Hebrew Bible states that these were preceded by a single kingdom ruled by Saul, David, and Solomon, who is said to have built the first temple. Archaeologists have debated whether the united monarchy ever existed, notes 137-38, with those in favor of such a polity existing further divided between maximalists who support the biblical accounts, 39, and minimalists who argue that any such polity was likely smaller than suggested. 40-41, Kingdoms of Israel and Judah. Historians and archaeologists agree that the northern kingdom of Israel existed by ca. 900 BC 40-43 and the kingdom of Judah existed by ca. 850 BC 44-45. The kingdom of Israel was the more prosperous of the two kingdoms and soon developed into a regional power. 46. During the days of the Umayyad dynasty, it controlled Samaria, Galilee, the upper Jordan Valley, the Sharon, and large parts of the Transjordan. 47. Samaria, the capital, was home to one of the largest Iron Age structures in the Levant. 48-49. The kingdom of Israel's capital moved between Shechem, Penuel, and Tirzah before Omri settled it in Samaria, and the royal succession was often settled by a military coup d'etat. The kingdom of Judah was smaller but more stable. The Davidic dynasty ruled the kingdom for the 4 centuries of its existence, with the capital always in Jerusalem, controlling the Judean mountains, most of the Shephelah, and the Beersheba Valley in the northern Negev. 50. In 854 BCE, according to Assyrian records, the Kirk monoliths. 51. An alliance between Ahab of Israel and Ben-Hadad of Aram Damascus managed to repulse the incursions of the Assyrians, with a victory at the Battle of Karkar. This is not reported in the Bible, which describes conflict between Ahab and Ben-Hadad. 52. Another important discovery of the period is the Mesha stele, a Moabite stele found in Dibon, now in the Louvre. In the stele, Mesha, king of Moab, tells how Chemosh, the god of Moab, had been angry with his people and had allowed them to be subjugated to the kingdom of Israel. But at length Chemosh returned and assisted Mesha to throw off the yoke of Israel and restore the lands of Moab. It refers to Omri, king of Israel. 53. To the god Yahweh. 54-53, and may contain another early reference to the house of David. 54. Jehu, son of Omri, is referenced by the black obelisk of Shalmaneser III. Assyrian invasions. See also Black Obelisk of Shalmaneser III, Sennacherib's Annals, and Resettlement Policy of the Neo-Assyrian Empire. Neo-Assyrian Empire at its greatest territorial extent. Tiglath-Pileser III of Assyria invaded Israel in around 732 BCE. 55. The kingdom of Israel fell to the Assyrians following a long siege of the capital Samaria around 720 BCE. 56. The records of Sargon II of Assyria indicate that he captured Samaria and deported 27,290 inhabitants to Mesopotamia. 57. It is likely that Shalmaneser captured the city, since both the Babylonian Chronicles and the Hebrew Bible viewed the fall of Israel as the signature event of his reign. 58. The Assyrian deportations became the basis for the Jewish idea of the 10 lost tribes. Foreign groups were settled by the Assyrians in the territories of the fallen kingdom. 59. The Samaritans claim to be descended from Israelites of ancient Samaria who were not expelled by the Assyrians. Detail of the Siloam inscription. It is believed that refugees from the destruction of Israel moved to Judah, massively expanding Jerusalem and leading to construction of the Siloam Tunnel during the rule of King Hezekiah, ruled 715,686 BC. 60. The tunnel could provide water during a siege, and its construction is described in the Bible. 61. The Siloam inscription, a plaque written in Hebrew left by the construction team, was discovered in the tunnel in 1880s and is today held by the Istanbul Archaeology Museum. 62. During Hezekiah's rule, Sennacherib, the son of Sargon, attempted but failed to capture Judah. Assyrian records say that Sennacherib leveled 46 walled cities and besieged Jerusalem, leaving after receiving extensive tribute. 63 Sennacherib erected the Lachish reliefs in Nineveh to commemorate a second victory at Lachish. Hezekiah, king of Judah, royal seal written in the Paleo-Hebrew alphabet, unearthed in Jerusalem. The writings of 4 different prophets are believed to date from this period: Hosea and Amos in Israel, and Micah and Isaiah of Judah. These men were mostly social critics who warned of the Assyrian threat and acted as religious spokesmen. They exercised some form of free speech and may have played a significant social and political role in Israel and Judah. 65 They urged rulers and the general populace to adhere to God-conscious ethical ideals, seeing the Assyrian invasions as a divine punishment of the collective resulting from ethical failures. 66 Under King Josiah, ruler from 641,619 BC, the Book of Deuteronomy was either rediscovered or written. The Book of Joshua and the accounts of the kingship of David and Solomon in the Book of Kings are believed to have the same author. The books are known as Deuteronomist and considered to be a key step in the emergence of monotheism in Judah. They emerged at a time that Assyria was weakened by the emergence of Babylon, and may be a committing to text of pre-writing verbal traditions. 67 Babylonian period 587–538 BC. Main articles: Judah's revolts against Babylon, Babylonian captivity, and Yehud Babylonian province. The route of the exiles to Babylon. During the late 7th century BC, Judah became a vassal state of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. In 601 BCE, Jehoiakim of Judah allied with Babylon's principal rival, Egypt, despite the strong remonstrances of the prophet Jeremiah. 68–69 As a punishment, the Babylonians besieged Jerusalem in 597 BCE, and the city surrendered. 68–70 The defeat was recorded by the Babylonians. 71–72 Nebuchadnezzar pillaged Jerusalem and deported King Jehoiakim, along with other prominent citizens, to Babylon. Zedekiah, his uncle, was installed as king. 68–73 A few years later, Zedekiah launched another revolt against Babylon, and an army was sent to conquer Jerusalem. 68 In 587 or 586 BCE, King Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylon conquered Jerusalem, destroyed the first temple, and razed the city. 68–74–75 The kingdom of Judah was abolished, and many of its citizens were exiled to Babylon. The former territory of Judah became a Babylonian province called Yehud, with its center in Mizpah, north of the destroyed Jerusalem. 74 Tablets that describe King Jehoiakim's rations were found in the ruins of Babylon. He was eventually released by the Babylonians. According to both the Bible and the Talmud, the Davidic dynasty continued as head of Babylonian Jewry, called the Rosh Galut, exilarch, or head of exile. Arab and Jewish sources show that the Rosh Galut continued to exist for another 1,500 years in what is now Iraq, ending in the 11th century. 76 Second Temple period. Main article: Second Temple period. Persian period 538–332 BC. See also: Return to Zion, Yehud Persian province, and Cyrus cylinder. Obverse of Yehud silver coin. Silver coin gira minted in the Persian province of Yehud, dated c. 375–332 BC. Ab VV, bearded head wearing crown, possibly representing the Persian great king. Rev, falcon facing, head right, with wings spread. Paleo-Hebrew Yid to right. In 538 BCE, Cyrus the Great of the Achaemenid Empire conquered Babylon and took over its empire. Cyrus issued a proclamation granting religious freedom to all peoples subjugated by the Babylonians. See the Cyrus cylinder. According to the Bible, Jewish exiles in Babylon, including 50,000 Judeans led by Zerubbabel, returned to Judah to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. The Second Temple was subsequently completed c. 515 BC, 77 A second group of 5,000, led by Ezra and Nehemiah, returned to Judah in 456 BCE. The first was empowered by the Persian king to enforce religious rules. The second had the status of governor and a royal mission to restore the walls of the city. 78 The country remained a province of the Achaemenid Empire called Yehud until 332 BCE. The final text of the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, is thought to have been written during the Persian period, probably 450,350 BC. The text was formed by editing and unifying earlier texts. 79. The returning Israelites adopted an Aramaic script, also known as the Ashuri alphabet, which they brought back from Babylon. This is the current Hebrew script. The Hebrew calendar closely resembles the Babylonian calendar and probably dates from this period. 80. The Bible describes tension between the returnees, the elite of the First Temple period, 81, and those who had remained in Judah. 82. It is possible that the returnees, supported by the Persian monarchy, became large landholders at the expense of the people who had remained to work the land in Judah, whose opposition to the Second Temple would have reflected a fear that exclusion from the cult would deprive them of land rights. 81. Judah had become in practice a theocracy, ruled by hereditary high priests. 83. And a Persian-appointed governor, frequently Jewish, charged with keeping order and seeing that tribute was paid. 84. A Judean military garrison was placed by the Persians on Elephantine Island near Aswan in Egypt. In the early 20th century, 175 papyrus documents recording activity in this community were discovered, including the Passover Papyrus, a letter instructing the garrison on how to correctly conduct the Passover feast. 85. Hellenistic period 3336 for BC. Main article, Hasmonean dynasty. In 332 BCE, Alexander the Great of Macedon conquered the region as part of his campaign against the Persian Empire. After his death in 322 BCE, his generals divided the empire, and Judea became a frontier region between the Seleucid Empire and Ptolemaic Kingdom in Egypt. 86. Following a century of Ptolemaic rule, Judea was conquered by the Seleucid Empire in 200 BCE at the Battle of Panium. Hellenistic rulers generally respected Jewish culture and protected Jewish institutions. 87–88 Judea was ruled by the hereditary office of the High Priest of Israel as a Hellenistic vassal. 89 Nevertheless, the region underwent a process of Hellenization, which heightened tensions between Greeks, Hellenized Jews, and observant Jews. These tensions escalated into clashes involving a power struggle for the position of high priest and the character of the holy city of Jerusalem. 90. When Antiochus IV Epiphanes consecrated the temple, forbade Jewish practices, and forcibly imposed Hellenistic norms on the Jews, several centuries of religious tolerance under Hellenistic control came to an end. In 167 BCE, the Maccabean revolt erupted after Mattathias, a Jewish priest of the Hasmonean lineage, killed a Hellenized Jew and a Seleucid official who participated in sacrifice to the Greek gods in Modian. His son Judas Maccabeus defeated the Seleucids in several battles, and in 164 BCE he captured Jerusalem and restored temple worship, an event commemorated by the Jewish festival of Hanukkah. 91–92. After Judas' death, his brothers Jonathan Aphus and Simon Thassi were able to establish and consolidate a vassal Hasmonean state in Judea, capitalizing on the Seleucid Empire's decline as a result of internal instability and wars with the Parthians, and by forging ties with the rising Roman Republic. Hasmonean leader John Hyrcanus was able to gain independence, doubling Judea's territories. He took control of Idumea, where he converted the Edomites to Judaism, and invaded Scythopolis and Samaria, where he demolished the Samaritan temple. 93 Hyrcanus was also the first Hasmonean leader to mint coins. Under his sons, Kings Aristobulus I and Alexander Jannes, Hasmonean Judea became a kingdom, and its territories continued to expand, now also covering the coastal plain, Galilee, and parts of the Transjordan. 94–95–796 Some scholars argue that the Hasmonean dynasty also institutionalized the final Jewish biblical canon. 97. Under Hasmonean rule, the Pharisees, Sadducees, and the mystic Essenes emerged as the principal Jewish social movements. The Pharisee sage Simeon ben Shedek is credited with establishing the first schools based around meeting houses. 98 This was a key step in the emergence of rabbinical Judaism. After Jannes's widow, Queen Salome Alexandra, died in 67 BC, her sons Hyrcanus II and Aristobulus II engaged in a civil war over succession. The conflicting parties requested Pompey's assistance on their behalf, which paved the way for a Roman takeover of the kingdom. 99. Early Roman period 64 BC to nth century CE. Main articles: Herodian dynasty, Herodian kingdom, Herodian tetrarchy, and Judea-Roman province. Portion of the Temple Scroll, one of the Dead Sea Scrolls written by the Essenes. In 64 BC, the Roman general Pompey conquered Syria and intervened in the Hasmonean civil war in Jerusalem, restoring Hyrcanus II as high priest and making Judea a Roman vassal kingdom. During the siege of Alexandria in 47 BC, the lives of Julius Caesar and his prot Cleopatra were saved by 3,000 Jewish troops, sent by Hyrcanus II and commanded by Antipater, whose descendants Caesar made kings of Judea. 100 From 37 BC to 6 CE, the Herodian dynasty, Jewish-Roman client kings of Edomite origin, descended from Antipater, ruled Judea. Herod the Great considerably enlarged the temple, see Herod's Temple, making it one of the largest religious structures in the world. At this time, Jews formed as much as 10% of the population of the entire Roman Empire, with large communities in North Africa and Arabia. 101. Augustus made Judea a Roman province in 6 CE, deposing the last Jewish king, Herod Archelaus, and appointing a Roman governor. There was a small revolt against Roman taxation led by Judas of Galilee, and over the next decades tensions grew between the Greco-Roman and Judean populations, centered on attempts to place effigies of Emperor Caligula in synagogues and in the Jewish temple. 102-103 Non-primary source needed. In 64 CE, the temple high priest Joshua ben Gamla introduced a religious requirement for Jewish boys to learn to read from the age of 6. Over the next few hundred years, this requirement became steadily more ingrained in Jewish tradition. 104 The latter part of the Second Temple period was marked by social unrest and religious turmoil, and messianic expectations filled the atmosphere. 105 Jewish-Roman Wars. Main articles: Jewish-Roman Wars, First Jewish-Roman War, Kitos War, and Bar Kokhba Revolt. The Arch of Titus in Rome depicts the Roman triumph celebrating the fall of Jerusalem in 70 CE. In 66 CE, the First Jewish-Roman War 6673 CE broke out due to the repressive rule of Roman governors. Growing hostility between the wealthy nobles and the impoverished masses. Clashes between Jews and pagans in mixed cities, and tensions between the Roman and Jewish religions. 106 The revolting Jews named their state Israel. 107 Despite early Jewish victories, the provisional government quickly collapsed, and Jews were split up into several warring factions with conflicting agendas. Eventually, the Roman army under the command of future emperors Vespasian and his son Titus besieged and destroyed the major Jewish strongholds one by one, including the cities of Yodfat, Gamla, and the fortress of Masada. After a brutal 5-month siege in 70 CE, Jerusalem and the Second Temple were completely destroyed. 108. The revolt's failure had profound demographic, theological, political, and economic consequences. Many Jews died fighting and under siege during the revolt, and a sizable portion of the population was either expelled from the country or displaced. 109 Without the Temple, Judaism had to change to ensure its survival. Judaism's temple-based sects, most notably the Sadducees, vanished. 110 The Pharisees, led by Yochanan ben Zakkai, obtained Roman permission to establish a school at Yavne. Their teachings became the foundational, liturgical, and ritualistic basis for Rabbinic Judaism, which eventually became the mainstream form of Judaism. 11111 to 113114. From 115 to 117, tensions and attacks on Jews around the Roman Empire led to a massive Jewish uprising against Rome, known as the Kitos War. Jews in Libya, Egypt, Cyprus, and Mesopotamia fought against Rome. This conflict was accompanied by large-scale massacres of both sides. Cyprus was so severely depopulated that new settlers were imported and Jews banned from living there. 115. In 132 CE, the Bar Kokhba revolt erupted. The uprising was led by a Jew named Simon Bar Kokhba, who ruled as Nasi, and was viewed by some of the rabbis of the period as the long-awaited Messiah. Based on the Bar Kokhba revolt coinage, the independent Jewish state was named Israel. 116 It has been suggested that a rabbinical assembly which convened during the revolt decided which books could be regarded as part of the Hebrew Bible. The Jewish Apocrypha and Christian books were excluded. 117. As a result, the original text of some Hebrew texts, including the books of Maccabees, were lost. Greek translations survived. A rabbi of this period, Simeon bar Yochai, is regarded as the author of the Zohar, the foundational text for Kabbalistic thought. However, modern scholars believe it was written in medieval Spain. 118. Christians refused to participate in the revolt, and from this point the Jews regarded Christianity as a separate religion. 119. The Bar Kokhba revolt was eventually crushed by Emperor Hadrian himself, with serious losses. Today, it is viewed by modern scholars as having decisive historic importance. 8. According to Cassius Dio, writing in the century following the revolt, 50 of the Jews' most important outposts and 985 of their most famous villages were razed to the ground. 580,000 men were slain in the various raids and battles, and the number of those that perished by famine, disease, and fire was past. Finding out, thus nearly the whole of Judea was made desolate. While scholars debate whether these numbers are accurate, 120. Archaeological surveys and excavations appear to confirm the claim of Cassius Dio that the district of Judea was largely depopulated. Most scholars agree that, in contrast to the aftermath of the First Jewish-Roman War, Judea was devastated after the Bar Kokhba revolt, with many Jews killed, exiled, or sold into slavery. 8, 9, 10, 11. Around the time of the revolt, the province of Judea was renamed Syria Palestina. The commonly held view is that it was implemented as punishment for the Bar Kokhba revolt, or to disassociate the Jewish people from their historical homeland and hold Hadrian accountable. 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, 1-4, 1-5. However, no evidence exists for this narrative, and it has been disputed by scholars in recent years. 1-6, 1-7, 1-8, 1-9. No other revolt led to a province being renamed. 130. Late Roman and Byzantine periods. Late Roman period 136-390. Further information: Syria Palestina, Rabbinic literature, and persecution of pagans in the late Roman Empire. As a result of the disastrous effects of the Bar Kokhba revolt, Jewish presence in the region significantly dwindled. 131. Over the next centuries, more Jews left to communities in the diaspora, especially the large, speedily growing Jewish communities in Babylonia and Arabia. 132. Others remained in the land of Israel, where the spiritual and demographic center shifted from the depopulated Judea to Galilee. 133, 134, 135. Jewish presence also continued in the southern Hebron Hills, in Ein Gedi, and on the coastal plain. 11. 133. The Mishnah and the Jerusalem Talmud, huge compendiums of rabbinical discussions, were compiled during the 2nd to 4th centuries CE in Tiberias and Jerusalem. 136. Following the revolt, Judea's countryside was penetrated by pagan populations. 137. Including migrants from the nearby provinces of Syria, Phoenicia, and Arabia. 138, 139. Whereas Aelia Capitolina, its immediate vicinity and administrative centers, were now inhabited by Roman veterans and settlers from the western parts of the empire. 140. The Romans permitted a hereditary rabbinical patriarch from the house of Hillel, called the Nasi, to represent the Jews in dealings with the Romans. One prominent figure was Judah ha-Nasi, credited with compiling the final version of the Mishnah, a vast collection of Jewish oral traditions. He also emphasized the importance of education in Judaism, leading to requirements that illiterate Jews be treated as outcasts. This might have contributed to some illiterate Jews converting to Christianity. 141. Jewish seminaries, such as those at Shephraim and Bet Shirim, continued to produce scholars. The best of these became members of the Sanhedrin. 142, which was located first at Sepphoris and later at Tiberias. 143. In the Galilee, many synagogues have been found dating from this period. 144. And the burial site of the Sanhedrin leaders was discovered in Beit Shirim. 145. 146. In the 3rd century, the Roman Empire faced an economic crisis and imposed heavy taxation to fund wars of imperial succession. This situation prompted additional Jewish migration from Syria Palestina to the Sasanian Empire, known for its more tolerant environment. There, a flourishing Jewish community with important Talmudic academies thrived in Babylonia, engaging in a notable rivalry with the Talmudic academies of Palestina. 147. Early in the 4th century, the Emperor Constantine made Constantinople the capital of the East Roman Empire and made Christianity an accepted religion. His mother Helena made a pilgrimage to Jerusalem 3-6-3-8 and led the construction of the Church of the Nativity, birthplace of Jesus. In Bethlehem, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, burial site of Jesus in Jerusalem, and other key churches that still exist. The name Jerusalem was restored to Aelia Capitolina and became a Christian city. Jews were still banned from living in Jerusalem, but were allowed to visit and worship at the site of the ruined temple. 148 Over the course of the next century, Christians worked to eradicate paganism, leading to the destruction of classical Roman traditions and eradication of their temples. 149 In 3512, another Jewish revolt in the Galilee erupted against a corrupt Roman governor. 150 Byzantine period 3906-34. Main articles: Palestina Prima and Palestina Secunda. Further information: Jewish revolt against Heraclius, Sasanian conquest of Jerusalem, and Eastern Orthodox Patriarchate of Jerusalem. Heraclius returning the true cross to Jerusalem, 15th century painting by Miguel Zimnes. The Roman Empire split in 390 CE and the region became part of the Eastern Roman Empire, known as the Byzantine Empire. Under Byzantine rule, much of the region and its non-Jewish population were won over by Christianity, which eventually became the dominant religion in the region. The presence of holy sites drew Christian pilgrims, some of whom chose to settle, contributing to the rise of a Christian majority. Christian authorities encouraged this pilgrimage movement and appropriated lands, constructing magnificent churches at locations linked to biblical narratives. 151 Additionally, monks established monasteries near pagan settlements, encouraging the conversion of local pagans. 137 During the Byzantine period, the Jewish presence in the region declined, and it is believed that Jews lost their majority status in Palestine in the 4th century. 152 While Judaism remained the sole non-Christian religion tolerated, restrictions on Jews gradually increased, prohibiting the construction of new places of worship, holding public office, or owning Christian slaves. 153 In 425, after the death of the last Nasi, Gamliel VI, the Nasi office and the Sanhedrin were officially abolished, and the standing of Yeshivat weakened. The leadership void was gradually filled by the Jewish center in Babylonia, which would assume a leading role in the Jewish world for generations after the Byzantine period. 151 During the 5th and 6th centuries CE, the region witnessed a series of Samaritan revolts against Byzantine rule. Their suppression resulted in the decline of Samaritan presence and influence and further consolidated Christian domination. 154 Though it is acknowledged that some Jews and Samaritans converted to Christianity during the Byzantine period, the reliable historical records are limited, and they pertain to individual conversions rather than entire communities. 155 In 611, Khosrow II, ruler of Sassanid Persia, invaded the Byzantine Empire. He was helped by Jewish fighters recruited by Benjamin of Tiberias and captured Jerusalem in 614. 156 The True Cross was captured by the Persians. The Jewish Himyarite kingdom in Yemen may also have provided support. Nehemiah ben Hushiel was made governor of Jerusalem. Christian historians of the period claimed the Jews massacred Christians in the city, but there is no archaeological evidence of destruction, leading modern historians to question their accounts. 157 158 159 In 628, Kavad II, son of Khosrow, returned Palestine and the True Cross to the Byzantines and signed a peace treaty with them. Following the Byzantine re-entry, Heraclius massacred the Jewish population of Galilee and Jerusalem, while renewing the ban on Jews entering the latter. 160 Early Muslim period. Main articles: Medina early history and Jewish control, Dhimmi, Jund Filastin and Jund al-Urdunn. Aerial view of the Temple Mount showing the Dome of the Rock in the center and the Al-Aqsa Mosque to the south. The Levant was conquered by an Arab army under the command of Umar ibn al-Khattāb in 635, and became the province of Bilad al-Sham of the Rashidun Caliphate. Two military districts, Jund Filastin and Jund al-Urdunn, were established in Palestine. A new city called Ramlah was built as the Muslim capital of Jund Filastin, 161, while Tiberias served as the capital of Jund al-Urdunn. The Byzantine ban on Jews living in Jerusalem came to an end. In 661, Muawiyah was crowned caliph in Jerusalem, becoming the first of the Damascus-based Umayyad dynasty. In 691, Umayyad Caliph Abd al-Malik 685–705 constructed the dome of the rock shrine on the Temple Mount where the two Jewish temples had been located. A second building, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, was also erected on the Temple Mount in 705. Both buildings were rebuilt in the 10th century following a series of earthquakes. 162. In 750, Arab discrimination against non-Arab Muslims led to the Abbasid Revolution, and the Umayyads were replaced by the Abbasid caliphs who built a new city, Baghdad, to be their capital. This period is known as the Islamic Golden Age. The Arab Empire was the largest in the world and Baghdad the largest and richest city. Both Arabs and minorities prospered across the region and much scientific progress was made. There were, however, setbacks. During the 8th century, the Caliph ʿUmar II introduced a law requiring Jews and Christians to wear identifying clothing. Jews were required to wear yellow stars round their neck and on their hats. Christians had to wear blue. Clothing regulations arose during repressive periods of Arab rule and were more designed to humiliate than persecute non-Muslims. A poll tax was imposed on all non-Muslims by Islamic rulers, and failure to pay could result in imprisonment or worse. 163. In 982, Caliph Al-Aziz Billah of the Cairo-based Fatimid dynasty conquered the region. The Fatimids were followers of Ismailism, a branch of Shia Islam, and claimed descent from Fatima, Mohammed's daughter. Around the year 1010, the Church of Holy Sepulchre, believed to be Jesus' burial site, was destroyed by Fatimid Caliph al-Hakim, who relented 10 years later and paid for it to be rebuilt. In 1020, al-Hakim claimed divine status, and the newly formed Druze religion gave him the status of a messiah. 162. Demographic changes. Although the Arab conquest was relatively peaceful and did not cause widespread destruction, it did alter the country's demographics significantly. 164. Over the ensuing several centuries, the region experienced a drastic decline in its population, from an estimated 1 million during Roman and Byzantine times to some 300,000 by the early Ottoman period. This demographic collapse was accompanied by a slow process of Islamization that resulted from the flight of non-Muslim populations, immigration of Muslims, and local conversion. The majority of the remaining populace belonged to the lowest classes, while the Arab conquerors themselves left the area after the conquest and moved on to other places. The settlement of Arab tribes in the area both before and after the conquest also contributed to the Islamization. 165, 166, 164. As a result, the Muslim population steadily grew and the area became gradually dominated by Muslims on a political and social level. 133, 167. During the early Islamic period, many Christians and Samaritans belonging to the Byzantine upper class migrated from the coastal cities to northern Syria and Cyprus, which were still under Byzantine control, while others fled to the central highlands and the Transjordan. As a result, the coastal towns, formerly important economic centers, connected with the rest of the Byzantine world, were emptied of most of their residents. Some of these cities, namely Ashkelon, Acre, Arsuf, and Gazino, fortified border towns, were resettled by Muslim populations, who developed them into significant Muslim centers. The region of Samaria also underwent a process of Islamization, as a result of waves of conversion among the Samaritan population and the influx of Muslims into the area. 164, 166. The predominantly Jacobite Monophysitic Christian population had been hostile to Byzantium orthodoxy, and at times for that reason welcomed Muslim rule. There is no strong evidence for forced conversion or for possibility that the jizya tax significantly affected such changes. 168. The demographic situation in Palestine was further altered by urban decline under the Abbasids, and it is thought that the 749 earthquake hastened this process by causing an increase in the number of Jews, Christians, and Samaritans who emigrated to diaspora communities, while also leaving behind others who remained in the devastated cities and poor villages until they converted to Islam. 133. Historical records and archaeological evidence suggest that many Samaritans converted under Abbasid and Tulunid rule, after suffering through severe difficulties such droughts, earthquakes, religious persecution, heavy taxes, and anarchy. 166. The same region also saw the settlement of Arabs Over the period, the Samaritan population drastically decreased, with the rural Samaritan population converting to Islam, and small urban communities remaining in Nablus and Caesarea, as well as in Cairo, Damascus, Aleppo, and Sarepta. 169 Nevertheless, the Muslim population remained a minority in a predominantly Christian area, and it is likely that this status persisted until the Crusader period. 133